With a new Kirby Air Riders Direct on the horizon, I have to get this off my chest because it's been on my mind for a while. I think moving forward in the Kirby series, especially when it comes to the mainline games, there is going to be a Kirby 6. Meaning there are going to be 6 mainline Kirby characters that appear in the games moving forward. I think these 3 additional characters are going to mimic the 3 main characters that we've had for the longest time and who have appeared in Smash Brothers and all that. So Kirby, Meta Knight, and Dedede. The 3 main characters that I have in mind that will mirror those original 3 are Bandana Waddle Dee, mirroring Kirby, Magolor, mirroring Meta Knight, and finally Carol or Clawroline, mirroring King Dedede. And if you don't know, Carol or Clawroline is the thick-hipped cat from Kirby and the Forgotten Land. So this is the breakdown of why I think this. So when you're talking about Bandana Waddle Dee, for starters, he is indeed the 4th Kirby character. He's been in a ton of games so far. He is Kirby's equivalent to Luigi, which is why I compare the 2 together. And of course, they have the same proportions. Now, what's so interesting about the spear copy ability is that this was his signature ability in Kirby's Return to Dreamland. And if you don't know, he is actually a pretty old character because he was also in Kirby Superstar as a servant to King Dedede. And it's funny that the last time that the spear ability appears is in Kirby Triple Deluxe, a game about King Dedede, pretty much. So after that game, if you're not counting the remake of Kirby's Return to Dreamland on the Switch, that's the last time that the spear ability appears for Kirby to have. So now the spear ability solely belongs to Bandana Waddle Dee, and I just find that a very interesting development because that hasn't happened before. If you don't know, Sword and Hammer are the abilities associated with Meta Knight and King Dedede, but Sword and Hammer have always been copy abilities for Kirby. They've never been retired. So it's a very interesting development that apparently the spear ability, as of this recording, has been somewhat retired, only being an ability solely belonging to Bandana Waddle Dee, which I just find an interesting development. Now, going on to Magolor. Magolor, in terms of shape and design, looks identical to Meta Knight, even when you consider how the 2 act in their respective games, Kirby Superstar and Kirby's Return to Dreamland. There are a lot of similarities between them. Both of them are masked men dressed in blue with their faces obscured with yellow eyes. Also, what's weird is that both of them are oddly RPG themed. Magolor is a sort of wizard, whereas Meta Knight, of course, is a swordsman. What's also quite interesting is that both of them are associated with ships. Meta Knight has his halberd, and Magolor has his lore Starcutter, and both of their names start with M, which I just think is funny. Another reason why I compare Magolor to Meta Knight is because Magolor got an extra mode in a recent Kirby game, much like how Meta Knight has gotten extra modes in Kirby games. Notably, Meta Knight got a mode called Meta Nightmare in the Game Boy Advance game Kirby Nightmare in Dreamland, in which you get to play through the adventure as Meta Knight. So, in the remake of Kirby's Return to Dreamland, originally for the Wii, called Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe, you have a mode called Magolor Epilogue, the Interdimensional Traveler, in which you get to play as Magolor. This acts as a sort of redemption arc for Magolor, in which he defeats the Master Crown, the thing that possessed him in the main story. And after he defeats the Master Crown and is sent to a parallel dimension, he becomes a shopkeeper, setting up the events for Kirby Clash Deluxe and Super Kirby Clash. So that's very interesting within itself. What's also very interesting too is that in this same game, he is the amusement park owner for all the sub games that you can play in Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe. So I think that really does cement him as a reoccurring character in the Kirby franchise. And of course, he's going to appear in Kirby Air Riders. But another thing I just find quite humorous is that Magolor has attacks called Revolution Orbs and Revolution Spear and Upward Revolution Flame, which I just find funny because he's originally from a Wii game, and the code name for the Nintendo Wii was called the Nintendo Revolution. So that's just interesting that he has Revolution and several attack names, and he's from a Wii game that was called the Nintendo Revolution. But now let's talk about Carol, or Coraline, from Kirby and the Forgotten Land. So I think Carol could be the only reoccurring female character in Kirby mainline games moving forward. I know we have Susie, but Susie seems to be only relegated towards celebratory games like Star Allies, of which everyone's in Star Allies, or secondary spin-off games like Kirby Air Riders. And the same goes for Adeline, because Adeline officially, I guess you could say, appears in Kirby 64 and then also appears in Kirby Star Allies. So I don't know. She also could be in Kirby's Dream Land 3, but that character goes by Addo, and it's not very clear if Addo and Adeline are the same person. So I don't know what to say about that. But talking about Coraline or Carol seems to be the queen, or at least second in command, of Leongar, the king of the animal kingdom, and she was the one who made the brutal beast pack after Leon Van Leongar got possessed by IDF-86 after finding it and started speaking in a language that Carol could not understand. So she made the brutal beast pack and then started going under the identity of Coraline. So I find that very interesting that she was willing to go through all of this because she simply believed in Leon. With that being said, what's so interesting about her and why I'm comparing her to King Dedede is because both of them are clearly animal characters, King Dedede being a penguin and her being a leopard, but both of them are also associated with royalty because all signs point to her being the queen of the animal kingdom, even though it's not really said. But based on the figure of Leon and Carol together that you get out of the capsule machine in Kirby and the Forgotten Land, it seems as though she was the queen of the animal kingdom. So both her and King Dedede are royalty. Oddly enough, too, out of all the bosses that you fight in Kirby and the Forgotten Land, she is the smallest. She is around the same size as King Dedede, which I find very interesting. Now, a little earlier when talking about Bandana Waddle Dee, I talked about copy abilities and how it appears as though the spear ability was retired after Kirby Triple Deluxe. This is a very interesting point to discuss when it comes to Carol, because even though you get the sword ability in her boss fight, she primarily uses claws to attack because she is a leopard. What's so interesting about claws in the Kirby series is that there is no claw copy ability. The closest thing I could find was the animal copy ability that appears in Kirby Squeak Squad, which is not really claw focused. It's more so an equivalent to a digging or drill power that just so happens to have claws associated with it, but it's not like a claw ability, which I found quite odd because claws are a pretty common weapon in media in general. For example, Marvel Comics Wolverine uses claws. Voldo from Soul Calibur uses claws. And then Vega from Street Fighter uses a claw weapon. So I found that a very interesting space that Carol could possibly fill in the Kirby franchise. What's also quite interesting too, even when you look at Smash Brothers, nobody in Smash Brothers uses a claw weapon that Kirby can copy. So this is free real estate for Carol to presumably occupy. Another interesting thing which makes me think of her being a very interesting complement to King Dedede is that while she is fast, tall, and has a swift weapon, King Dedede, in contrast, is slow, lumbering, and has a very heavy weapon. So I do think they complement each other in that regard. But When talking about how I think claws can be used in a gameplay format, I would look to Platinum Games' Wonderful 101 that originally came out for the Wii U and then re-released on the Nintendo Switch, in which you have a character called Wonder White who uses his claws to pry open enemy defenses. So I think Carol could presumably do the same in upcoming Kirby games. But with that being said, give me your thoughts and stay rosy.